What if I told you that the person smiling at you right now, the one who always asks how you're doing, the one who never seems to break, is living an entirely different life behind closed doors? Stay with me, because what Carl Jung discovered about emotional duality will fundamentally change how you understand the people you think you know best. Carl Jung said that every human being wears a mask. He called it the persona. But what happens when someone's mask isn't hiding weakness or insecurity? What happens when the mask is hiding an ocean? That's the double life of an empath. And trust me, by the end of this, you'll never look at the quiet ones the same way again. Here's what most people don't realize. According to Carl Jung's research on psychological types, empaths exist in a permanent state of duality. In public, they're the calm ones, the listeners, the ones who hold space for everyone else's chaos. But behind closed doors, they carry the weight of every emotion they've absorbed throughout the day. Every tension they've diffused, every pain they've taken on that was never theirs to carry. Jung called this the tension between the inner world and the outer world, and for empaths that tension never stops. But here's where it gets fascinating and deeply unsettling. Carl Jung discovered that the persona, our public self, requires enormous psychological energy to maintain. For most people, the gap between who they appear to be and who they truly are is small. But for empaths, that gap is a canyon. In public, they radiate warmth. In private, they collapse under the sheer volume of what they've absorbed. They don't just feel tired, they feel hollowed out, emptied, like they've given pieces of themselves to everyone they've encountered, and there's nothing left for the person in the mirror. And this is where Jung's psychology reveals something most people completely miss. According to Carl Jung, the shadow self contains everything we hide from the world. But for empaths, the shadow doesn't contain darkness in the traditional sense. It contains exhaustion. It contains resentment they feel guilty about. It contains the desperate need to be alone that they're terrified to express, because they've built their entire identity around being available for others. The empath's shadow is the scream they never release, and Jung understood that what remains unexpressed doesn't disappear, it transforms. But here's what will absolutely change your perspective on every empath you've ever known. Carl Jung observed that individuals who consistently suppress their authentic needs develop what he called a compensatory personality. The empath who always says yes is secretly drowning in the need to say no. The empath who always listens is silently begging for someone to hear them. The empath who heals everyone around them is privately falling apart. This isn't hypocrisy. Jung understood it as psychological survival. The empath learned early, often in childhood, that their value was tied to their usefulness, that love was conditional on their capacity to absorb other people's pain. So they built a life around that role, and now they're trapped inside it. Listen carefully, because this is where the double life becomes genuinely dangerous. According to Carl Jung's theory of individuation, a person cannot live divided forever. The mask eventually cracks. The unexpressed self eventually demands to be heard. Jung called this the return of the repressed, and for empaths it doesn't arrive gently. It arrives as sudden withdrawal. The empath who was always present vanishes without explanation. It arrives as unexpected rage. The person who never raised their voice erupts over something seemingly insignificant. It arrives as complete emotional shutdown. The one who felt everything suddenly feels nothing at all. And the people around them are stunned, because they never saw it coming. But Jung would tell you it was always coming. Every suppressed need, every swallowed frustration, every moment of self-abandonment was building toward this inevitable rupture. But here's the part that most people never understand, and it changes everything. The empath's double life isn't a choice. It's a cage they built with their own compassion. Carl Jung discovered that our greatest strengths, when taken to extremes, become our deepest prisons. The empath's extraordinary ability to feel becomes the very thing that traps them. They can sense what everyone needs, but they've lost the ability to identify what they need themselves. They can read every room, but they can't read their own exhaustion until it's too late. Jung called this psychological inflation, the over-identification with one aspect of the self at the expense of the whole. The empath inflates their caretaker role until it consumes their entire identity. And when someone's identity depends entirely on serving others, asking for help feels like annihilation. What happens next is what Jung called the dark night of the soul, and it's both terrifying and necessary. According to Carl Jung, genuine transformation requires a confrontation with everything we've been avoiding. For the empath living a double life, this means facing an unbearable truth. They have been betraying themselves, not because others forced them to, but because they chose the comfort of being needed over the terror of being authentic. Jung understood that this realization is devastating, but he also understood that it's the doorway to wholeness. The empath must learn that their worth doesn't depend on their capacity to absorb suffering. That boundaries are not acts of cruelty, but acts of self-preservation. That the person they've been neglecting most urgently is the one staring back at them every morning. And here's where Jung's psychology offers something extraordinary. Carl Jung said that the integration of opposites is the highest achievement of the human psyche. For the empath, this means learning to hold both truths simultaneously. They can be deeply compassionate and fiercely protective of their own energy. They can love profoundly and still walk away from what drains them. They can feel everything and still choose what they carry. This is what Jung called the end of the double life. Not the death of empathy, but the birth of conscious empathy. The empath stops living for others and starts living with them. They stop performing compassion and start practicing it with discernment. They stop disappearing behind their mask and start showing the world what's underneath. And what's underneath, Jung discovered, is not the fragile creature everyone assumed. It's someone who has carried the emotional weight of entire rooms, entire families, entire relationships, and is still standing. Someone who has lived two lives simultaneously and has finally chosen to make them one. Carl Jung said that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. For the empath who has been living a double life, that journey begins the moment they stop asking what everyone else needs and finally, for the first time, ask themselves the question they've been avoiding their entire life. What do I need? And when they answer it honestly, when they stop performing and start existing, what emerges is not less compassionate but infinitely more powerful. Because an empath who has learned to include themselves in their own circle of care doesn't just survive. They become what Jung called a whole human being. And that wholeness, that refusal to be divided any longer, is the most radical act of courage the empath will ever perform. This is the truth behind the double life. And once you see it, you'll understand that the strongest people you know aren't strong because they carry everything. They're strong because one day they finally learn to put it down.